Welcome to the RevOps Loop podcast with Maarten and Stjepan, brought to you by Digital Reach and the nonprofit Tech Shop. Get ready to learn about revenue operations, HubSpot, and beer.
Hey guys, welcome to RevOps Loop episode 7 already. Topic for today, we're going to be looking more at the project management side of RevOps, and for that, because neither Stjepan or I work in project management specifically, but we work closely with project managers, one of which is with us today. Hi Paige. Paige, you want to give us a quick intro? Who are you? What do you do for a living? And why did we invite you on today specifically to talk about project management in RevOps?
Cool. So I'm Paige, based in South Africa, Cape Town, and for a living, I run the project coordination department or section at Digital Reach. And so I am the person who everyone comes to in crisis, and we try
Yep.
and create the calm in the chaos. So that's pretty much what I do all day.
Yep. That sounds about right. No, cool. So yeah, definitely want to dig into sort of all the aspects of project management, I guess the more operational side of things. How do you go about setting things up? What kind of tools do you use, methods? The human side, which I know is a big part of it as well, both internally and then client facing. But maybe I guess just to set the stage and talking about what exactly is, when we talk about a RevOps project, and maybe that's even too exclusive. It's not just RevOps projects, right? But different types of projects that are out there that you do work on. What are sort of some of these different formats that you typically work on? What are the differences? Because I know there's not really a one size fits all for what exactly constitutes a project. So yeah, maybe just to start with a framework there. What are some of these different types of projects that you typically work on?
Okay, so there are three types of main projects that we work on. So the first one is the bucket of hours, where clients just kind of buy 50 hours and we use up the hours on a request basis. Then we have retainers. So we typically have three types of projects that we work on, and my favorite is the defined projects. So that's when we literally have line items that have been scoped out. They are super easy to ensure that the team has everything they need. The client knows exactly what they're getting. Everything is predefined from the get-go. Then we've got the bucket of hours and the retainers. So the bucket of hours, clients buy literally a bucket of hours. They buy 50, sometimes even just 10, whatever suits their needs. And then they can just task by task, we use up the hours until they're finished. And then on our retainers, it's more like a budget bucket. And then those are just ongoing, where we're on call for any tasks over a period of usually 6 months to a year, sometimes longer.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a expanded bucket of hours.
Yeah.
And
And I guess
regarding the types of the projects, are there like different tools that you use to like monitor those projects? So, for example, for a bucket of hours, do you use like a tool that you don't use when you're like monitoring like a scoped project? How does that process work?
Good question. So we use teamwork.com as our project management tool, and I actually try and use the same tools across every type of project just so that there's some consistency for the team. But we use them in different ways. So for a defined project, everything is set out individually per project, and we translate all the line items into a project in teamwork from the beginning. Whereas a bucket of hours or retainer, the teamwork project is a bit more bare bones. So we populate that as we go, as the task requests come in from clients. So very much same tools, different formats.
Yeah. So I guess, I mean, defined project, I feel like that's what everyone would think about when you think about a project, which is kind of scope out what exactly needs to be done. What are the milestones? What's the end goal? What are all the individual steps that go in between, which on paper sounds most organized. I'm sure in practice, obviously there needs to be flexibility there and things change. Whereas then these bucket of hours, retainer type agreements, that's more for, and correct me if I'm wrong, but more for these, we don't know exactly what we're going to be needing and what we're going to be wanting, so we need some built-in flexibility. And instead of then just saying, let's get to work and we'll think about resources later, it's like, no, let's put this in some kind of format so we can track this effectively. Is that essentially what I guess the different use cases would be for those projects?
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the retainers in the bucket of hours are very much for the clients who almost just want you on call. So we the HubSpot
Yeah.
experts that they turn to when they kind of run into a problem, whereas a defined project is more like addressing a problem that they know about already.
Yeah. And do you have do you have a favorite? I know my preference is always these bucket of hours type projects where it's essentially just get to work and figure it out, this and that. I'm sure that's project manager's worst nightmare. Do you have a preference? Like, which ones do you typically prefer?
I would definitely always go for a defined project. It's a little bit harder to keep the team and the client accountable to a scope. So it's not always like
Mhm.
super easy to manage, but it's just cleaner. You know exactly what capacity is going to do. Like just for internal management, it works a lot easier. But I think from a client
Yeah.
perspective, I think there's more value in a retainer with the flexibility
Yeah.
of it all. But for me, defined all the way.
So,
Yeah.
so you mentioned something interesting is like keep everybody accountable and keep client accountable of the scope and the line items and everything. But like, how do you do that? Like, what's your thinking? Let's say you got a project landed on your email, there's a signing, and you need to prep everything. And you said you're using Teamwork and maybe some other tools. Like, how do you start as a coordinator? Um, Project coordinator lead, then how do you address like the team that will be working, and yeah, just like talk more about that. And then like let's say there's a, I don't know, client changes, like there's like change management in the project, they need to like change different things in line items. Is there then when it's like an added scope, does that get like a bucket of hours additionally? Yeah, just like talk us through that.
Oh, you've opened up a can of worms there because I think
Mhm.
that the so when a project signs and we get it, and I'm just going to speak for a defined project to start with. Those are the ones that I deal with the most often. So we get a defined project. Um, we have an SOW that the client has signed, which guides the clients on what they're accountable to. But internally, we have a bit of a scope and that breaks down exactly who's responsible for what line item, how many hours, how much budget is allocated per line item. So the kickoff phase for me is usually the busiest because I have to translate what the client has signed off into tasks and teamwork. So I will, you know, email the client, get the meeting set up, get the kickoff going. Then internally, we have a kickoff meeting. The team aligns on what was scoped. We make sure everyone's on the same page with understanding why we are doing this project so we don't get
Right.
bogged down with individual tasks. And then, then we kick off with the client, we hold the workshops. But I think the accountability aspect comes in when in teamwork, you can
Mhm.
see based on the scope that I spoke about earlier, you can see exactly how much time you have within budget to achieve the task that you've been given. And all of the tasks get allocated to the people on the project. And usually our leadership
Mhm.
team decides on who will be on the project given capacity, but also skill set. And so then we assign the
Yeah.
tasks from everyone already. So everyone knows what they're responsible for. And then I work with the consultant to make sure that everyone has what they need to keep going.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop there for now, but
No,
yeah,
I
we can
feel
open it up.
you make it sound very easy, Paige. Like just step by step. You do the workshop. You set up the task. I know there's a lot that kind of goes in between there, especially because, and I will always find this quite difficult, is that and not only are not no two projects the same, the way projects comes in through clients is very different. Some are very detailed and know exactly what they want, and you're essentially just jumping in a call with them and gathering requirements. Right? Okay, we need to build these automations. We need to have a new lifecycle stage system. This needs to plug into these three platforms, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, you're frantically taking notes of, all right, we just need to build out a plan. Whereas I'm sure we've all worked on projects like this before as well, where the request is very vague, right? And they're essentially kind of looking for consultancy slash strategy inputs from you, from us, from whoever they're working with, to then eventually put that scope together. And so I guess also specific from a human aspect, there's a different start to a project there that can happen, right? And I don't know if is that something you encounter a lot as well. What are some of the best practices there? Like, hey, a client who knows exactly what they want, a client who thinks they know what they want, but it's unrealistic. That's probably also a use case. Versus a client
Yeah.
who doesn't really know what they want and come with questions. Like, what are some of those scenarios? And do you have any best practices, tips for these different scenarios that you may come across?
I think the overarching thing for me in these types of kickoffs is that I don't know if clients always understand what a big commitment these kind of projects are, right? Like
Right,
when we when we start these projects, we essentially become one team, and
right.
we need a lot from clients. Like in a good way, it's
Yeah.
always results in very good change, but we do need a lot from them. And so I think no matter if the client knows what they want or not, trying to be transparent about how much effort is going to be needed from them. Then we kind of leave the
Hmm.
consultants to dig through the weeds. But I
Hmm.
think as long as, I guess my biggest tip would just be for clients to be super transparent about what they're hoping to get out of all of this. And whether that's like in terms of, objectives and goals, maybe timeline is a issue for them, like just being super open and honest with us so that we can work together as a team. But I think
Yeah.
as for the knowing and the not knowing, as you said, pros and cons, because sometimes when someone has a vision of what they want and it's not translatable, that can be hard. But I'm lucky enough to
Yeah.
leave that to the consultants for the most part.
So you're mentioning consultants and like client team needs to be involved and everybody's one team. And like I'm interested in like the roles. So like it seems it's not like just one role, like consultant role or a key stakeholder role. There are probably many people involved, different personalities, different personas, different skill sets. So let's say the project kicked off, uh, the consultant is doing, I think we mentioned workshops. So like who else is involved? And like what I'm interested is like how do you keep all of those different personalities working together to achieve the one goal at like let's say a set period of time if it's the defined project, and like what are some tips you can share, because like that's probably I think the hardest to do in a project that's like moving, especially if it's let's say like end of the year, like now the projects need to be closed, the client wants to maybe like start a new project but this is like not closed yet. So can you talk more about that?
Mm. So, on a typical project, whether defined or retainer, we usually have about 5 roles, so 5 people per project. And so you've got me as the project management aspect. Then we've got our consultants, and they're the people who do a lot of talking, figuring out, translating client needs. Then we've got the solution engineers, and they are kind of like the brains. They take what the consultant gives them, they map it all out in a tool called Lucidchart, and they make sure that whatever the client wants, they map out if it's possible and how would or what would be the best way for what they want
Yeah.
to do to be built. And then we've got our implementation specialists, and they build out what the engineer has mapped out for them. So the mapping is kind of like a blueprint for the implementation specialist. And then if needed, we have implementation engineers, and we call them just like our devs, our
Mm.
developers, and they do all the hard stuff with all the APIs and all the hard things in the background. And you are right, 5 different personalities on one project can get heated at some points. But I think again, I'm very, very strong on transparency with the team. So we meet twice a week, 15 minutes each. We have sprints, we align, we hash it out. And so I think the
Even
sprints
in
are the
that, like even in those early stages of scoping a project together, even then you're having sprints with all the different people who are involved or going to be involved, just to get alignment, so there's no surprises, and implementation specialist gets something on their plate a couple of weeks down the line. How the hell am I supposed to do
yeah.
this? So you're getting them involved early on as well.
And it
Yeah.
seems like on the on your side those are the roles, but like probably on the client sides they also have like somebody that's I don't know, a project coordinator on their end, somebody that's like skilled using the APIs, like a developer team or IT specialist, somebody that wants to translate the CEO vision to the project. So like there's also like, I like that because like the roles are probably like a duplicate of the client roles that you're tackling. So everybody is like has their best person to talk alongside, like relationship that's like client and the DR team or the team that's delivering the project. So I really like that. But is there like a how do you track what what the roles are doing? So I know you mentioned teamwork, but like you also mentioned at the beginning, the client, you're expecting something from the client. Like it's not one one like one the one side just delivering. You need to get inputs. You need to get like what systems they are using, what systems you want to optimize, like logins. I don't know, like a lot, probably a ton of things before like the blueprint even starts to be drafted. So how do you get that? And like I'm aiming like share some tips. Like how do you, let's say there's a system where like the client is not comfortable giving you access. Is there like a tip that somebody can use listening to this episode, like, oh, I approach it this way and mostly like 70 to 90% we get the access eventually? So I know I'm asking a lot, but like if you can just go share something. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so just to go back to when you first started speaking, when a client has a project manager for our project specifically, I love that. That's my favorite. I feel
Right.
like we know we're in for a good project if they've got a project manager. Um,
Right.
moving towards the access part of your question, we have had that quite a few times. Like we've signed projects where we need access to be able to do the project, but the clients have very valid data concerns, privacy issues, and so I think step one, building trust with their team and showing, like, explaining to them the importance and the why behind why we need it,
Mhm.
and then I think the cop out answer is just NDAs, right?
Right.
Explaining why we need it, signing NDAs. Legally, they're protected, but I think from our side, yeah, just explaining the importance.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I know, I mean, I think that's always a challenge in the beginning, right? Okay, building trust, bit of a cliche, it's something you want to do, easier said than done when, you're on a timeline, you want to get started, you want to build trust so you can get access and start working on things, but you don't know each other very well just yet, right?
Yeah,
And then I think, especially when you're having some of these more difficult conversations in the beginning, like an unrealistic timeline, right? You're in those first few scoping calls, and client says, I basically want to have 3 CRM systems fully integrated and have 3 external platforms, and then these automations set up 3 or 4 weeks. And you're like, okay, well, we're going to have a tough conversation here. And even though that trust is not necessarily there just yet, right? You don't know them that well. So you got to be the boogeyman, I guess, who says, hey, you can't do this. How,
yeah,
how do you approach that? I guess, is it the same? Are you looking at it through the same lens of, hey, just transparency? It's doable or it's not. You kind of take that risk of pushing back early on in the relationship, but just to establish that, hey, we're going to be transparent here, no false promises, because I know that's an easy trap to step into, right? Again, in those early stages, you're trying to get trying to get the client to like you, right? To put it in simple terms. And so you just kind of go along. And I feel like that's an easy trap to step into. How do you avoid that? Or is there not really a secret to it and it's just don't do it? Don't don't make promises you can't keep. Like, is it just that simple?
So something that I discuss with the team quite often is like, is the benefit of making the client happy right now going to serve them long term when we inevitably would
Mm,
have to let them down, because we know through our
right,
expertise that we are going to have to let them down. And for
right.
me, when I put myself in the client's shoes, I would always vote to know upfront. So
Sure.
in projects I'm in, I definitely think the transparency at the beginning, and also just explaining, because I think when clients have requests, they don't always understand exactly, and rightfully so, what
Mm,
needs to go into that request, or the background tasks. So even just explain to them why it would take so long, why it's not feasible. And I think that adds an element of understanding and by default trust, because
yeah,
you take the time to explain to them. Because I 100% hear what you're saying. Like, we hit the ground running. You meet me in the kickoff call for the first time, and by next week, I want workshop one, and tell me all your company secrets so we can make it happen for you.
yeah,
So definitely just it sounds so repetitive, but transparency in these projects is key. Like,
yeah,
I went into a client meeting last week, and the team and we had a strategy. We knew exactly what we wanted to say and guide the client on. And we got in the call, we started listening to her. She offered some new context, and we pivoted completely from what we were going to, suggest and
right,
arrange for her, because the context that they provided meant that we had to change. And if she wasn't transparent with us and raised that some of her stakeholders, felt rushed or whatever, we wouldn't have been able to pivot, and then they would
right.
have been unhappy. So I do
Yeah,
think that trust, happy stakeholders, happy page.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I guess if you when you're through that initial, I guess that awkward phase, right, of and getting your scope together and timeline and maybe making some pivots and some changes. Let's say everything went smoothly, project's running, consultants know what to do, solution engineers know what to do. Everyone's got their tasks pretty much laid out, and everyone knows exactly what to do for the next 6 months. Everything's paid for, everything's finalized, and then changes happen. I'm sure that happens all the time as well. The infamous scope creep or a change in stakeholders, right? Like, what are some of these things that you've experienced that are like the biggest traps, I guess, for, let's say, a project that at first glance looks successfully set up? You're on a roll, you're ready to go. What are some of these typical things that can and do go wrong, and yeah, how do you address them?
Oof. Okay. So
I
yeah,
know,
I feel like
sensitive
no
subject there.
planning. Yeah, I think you can plan till the cows come home. You are never going to be 100% prepared. I think
Sure.
for me, the biggest thing that we experience, especially with clients who are new to HubSpot, is when the solution engineer explains the mapping to kind of explain to the client what is going to be built out by the implementation specialist. Because they don't always understand HubSpot fully, they don't always know what they are approving, or what is in a
Yeah.
technical mapping, how that's going to translate into HubSpot. So I think
And you're
that's a
speaking,
huge,
so just to jump
yeah,
in on that, you're speaking about HubSpot obviously because you're working primarily on HubSpot
yes.
centered project, but I'm sure that's a general thing that happens, right? Where depending on the stakeholders you have with the clients, there's buy-in, but do they fully know what they bought into? Not always, right?
Yeah, like
You know,
I mean, we customizing platforms that people don't know what it can do yet, right? So
mhm,
then they get
yeah,
into the platform, and maybe it's not exactly how they thought it was going to look. Maybe they see more functionality and they get excited. Now they want added things. So those changes happen very often. And then
mhm,
stakeholders being changed, that can be quite tricky. Having to put in the extra time just to get the new stakeholders up and running with you so they can understand where you're at in a project. Sometimes needs of companies also change, and so then they will ask to maybe exchange line items. Then we can do scope requests changes. So
yeah,
just a little written, we don't want this, we want that. So we try and be flexible with those changes. And we also try and have like a bit of a timeline of, on this date we need this from you, you need this from us on these dates, and get those kind of up and running so that the client knows exactly what we need when, so that those changes can be minimized,
Yep. And like what you said, like if somebody's new to a platform, doesn't matter if it's a HubSpot CRM, if it's another CRM, or maybe some other system. Like Martin, you're also working on a lot of projects. I'm doing that. Pages, like you're coordinating it. But like I see that like sometimes it's like, okay, you present a scope, and the first thing that where somebody cuts a line item, it's like enablement, training. Like that's probably something that's like just the last part of the scope, and then it's where probably that I saw is like, oh, if we were able to like enable the people that will be doing the things that we build, then probably they will better understand the blueprint that we are building.
Yeah.
And that's like where, from my experience as like somebody training people, is like where I'm like confused, but at the same time I know like we all have budget constraints and stuff. But is there anything that like you can do as a project coordinator uh, with the client to like, I don't know, somehow like gather their, I don't know how tech savvy are there or something that can be then like, okay, but let's review the scope. I think you will need like 5 extra hours of this because it will help you down the line. Is that possible? Does client ever come with that request to you or something?
Sure. I'm thinking. So
Like
sometimes in
Stjepan is,
our
I was just gonna
in
say,
our
I'm sure Stjepan with his focus on enablement, it gets tired of this being cut initially, and then clients coming crawling back saying like, "Wait, this thing you built, we need training on it," and then it's a whole mess to get it back set up. So I guess indeed, like, how do you communicate importance of certain elements that would be like typically the first things people want to scratch off a project scope, like an enablement, right? And then you're essentially telling them, no, it's enablement's going to be important for this solution that you don't necessarily fully understand just yet. I guess how do you communicate that importance to clients?
I guess it's explaining the importance of the foundation, right? Like we can't
Mm.
start building and explaining things if they don't understand the very basics, especially for onboarding to a new platform. You need to understand the basics first. So, Stepan, I definitely see that as a slight
Mm.
frustration because it is so important, and I think people underestimate the value of it. I think that when it comes to clients, it's also important, like you said, to understand their level of technical understanding, because there are some clients who really don't need it. They have a champion for change on their side who is experienced. They know maybe the client's working with a different partner and they have experience in the platform. So there's a lot of different situations, and I think bringing it back to almost layman's terms, not using all the lingo, and explaining and having a conversation to find out what they know and what they don't know.
Yeah,
And when you figure out what they don't know, being able to guide them, and even like knowledge-based articles, and sent a lot of those, and looms, and just a little few resources, and then suddenly a lot of questions come out the woodwork.
yeah,
Yeah, and where let's say, yeah, you're storing all of those like Loom videos, documents, client, I don't know, client questions that are maybe like a three page scroll emails. Like, is there like a place you store them so people can review it? So let's talk more about like the tools, like the operational side. Like, which tools are you using day to day? Which tools are maybe like the tools that that you give clients access to? How does that work?
Mm. So I think my one source of truth is the what I've kind of coined a master document, and so that's an external document that we share with clients, and that has links to everything: SOWs, um, just Loom videos, the mapping, just every link you can think of. If the link isn't there, the document doesn't exist. And so that's where we keep track of all those super long things. and we have different tabs in the document with notes and consolidations, stakeholder documents that need to get filled out. So the master document is my primary tool. I also think it's a bit easier than having several email threads. So we've got the master document. Then we also have an internal version of a master document, and that's where we keep things that maybe the client doesn't need to see, but we need to know to keep things moving. When the client is out at
Right.
events, like when they're at low capacity, those kind of things that needs to be taken into consideration. Another tool we have is like it's a timeline, but it's in the form of a table. So we have the dates in one column, then we have a an action that the project team needs to do, and then the reaction that the client needs to do, because in these
Right.
projects it's obviously, like you're saying, it's not one-sided. So we've got that as a tool that's super useful. We've got teamwork, like I mentioned. I think I'm in teamwork 80% of the week, just absolutely driving everyone crazy with comments and follow-ups. We also use
Right.
snippets in all of our teamwork tasks. So everyone is expected to comment with snippets, and they explain what they did, if QA was approved or not. If it wasn't, why wasn't it approved? What are next steps? Just very transparent communication and teamwork to make sure that all the tasks are like there's
Yeah.
traceability along the thought process. So I think those are the main things that I push for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, bringing structure from the high level. First of all, this master doc, everything is linked there. And sort of all the general work documentation, contracts there, but all the way down to the individual updates on tasks and subtasks that are that are part of the bigger project. Like, even there, you're trying to encourage. You mentioned snippets, right, where folks are, I guess, updating on their work in structured formats. Something tells me that's easier said than done to get everyone to do that. I'm sure a big part of the job is getting folks to follow these rules. But I guess, and maybe just to end on that, right? Maybe a lesson for anyone who is a bit unstructured in their general work approach, including myself. What are, on your side, like the biggest pitfalls there of not doing that? There's a project there, and people are just not following your structure and not using your snippets, and not putting the information in the master doc when it should be. You know, do, do you see any kind of major consequences from time to time as a result of that? Like, what are sort of the biggest downfalls there?
Oh, definitely. And I think I it's like you're not doing all these things, you're not following these processes for right now. You're following it so that if something goes wrong or someone leaves or there's a change, that we can follow,
Right.
trace everything, we can follow it up. And so I think that sometimes it doesn't get taken as seriously as it could, just because you don't see the effects every day. But
Sure.
when the time comes when you will inevitably have to look at it, because projects are so long, then we do see that, task statuses, you're unclear if a task was complete or not, if no snippets were used, if, we need to be able to know as a team if QA was approved or not. And all of these things come back to, we're going to have so much more internal team communication
Right.
if we don't have those snippets, because, you're going to have me and your DMs following up on tasks that the status of, but no one else does.
Right.
So definitely fall into the trap of just, I'm going to be following up with you. And I think people get tired of hearing from me, so they just do it. And then for the master document, I think it's, Stepan, I know that you had a client a while ago where they wanted all of the links to looms that we've shared throughout the project. If we hadn't have had that master document up to date, it would have taken hours to compile all of those links. So I think you really
Yeah,
save yourself.
that one saved me. So probably I just like needed to like go to my email and like link to more. But like if I didn't have that audit trail, or I would say like you're building, let's say you're creating a series like a TV show. So like
Yeah.
when somebody re-watches it, they know like what has happened, what has been accomplished, who left the series or not. So that helped me a lot, and I think that's what like master doc is.
Yeah.
insane good tool and it's so easy to do, but at sometimes there's like hard following it. But I would
Yeah.
say it's necessary.
Yeah.
Even if it's smaller projects, is like just making sure that you spend a couple of minutes. Okay, we did this. How can we translate it to the
Yeah.
just one link, and then somebody opens it and it's like a book of everything that was accomplished in the month by by this actor, meaning this role and this role, and why was the project delayed? Okay, we know that. Let's see the like tab number 4. Okay, there was like multiple people on leave, or it was like a conference period for the client, and we know why this has happened, and correctly adjust. Yeah.
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 It's cool
And
to
I
see that
think
there's some actual. Sorry, Paige. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say my favorite is when clients have new stakeholders and you can just send them the whole master doc and be
Yeah.
like, let me know if you have questions. You don't even have to
Yeah.
jump on a call straight away because there's so much to give them from the get go. So it does take a bit of effort to keep it going, but worthwhile. And also with the small project, if it turns into a bigger project, now you're off to a good start already. So
Yeah. But it's cool to see that there's some actual wins, I guess, from proper project hygiene, like exactly that new client stakeholder. Here's a document, here's everything you need, or a request comes in. Hey, can you give me a rundown of everything that you've recorded for me in the last 2 months? Here it is. Because I know very often the topic only comes up when things go wrong, right? Where it's internally a couple people leave and all of a sudden no one really knows what's going on. Oh, damn, project hygiene was a big issue. So good to see that it also comes with direct wins from it as well.
And because like some of the projects are like in phases, so it can be like phase 1, it's like couple of weeks. Phase 2 is bigger. Phase 3, like if you have a master doc from the beginning, you can easily see like, okay, where was the bottleneck? Maybe like we are talking about roles and personalities. Like, okay, this person doesn't watch the looms. Let's try something else in phase
yeah,
3. Or like this person is like very hard to get via email. Let's maybe do something else, and let's align on phase 3 to make sure that he gets what he needs by whatever tool we can use and share. So like it's not just like links and docs, and it's more like you get insights from it.
yeah,
Especially now with like AI, you can just feed it in, I don't know, notebook LLM, and you can just like say, okay, give me everything where Martin is mentioned, and make a summary for me. So there's
Yeah,
multiple cases from that. Yeah.
yeah,
and my personal favorite is how when you record meetings or you have your note taker in meetings, then you've got these links everywhere. And my favorite is when you again have new stakeholders or you just want to follow back on something, you just at a glance have all of your meeting recordings and things in one go. Like that is my favorite. It's such a
yeah,
simple win, but it really is a win when you're just trying to quickly get answers. When does this project start? When is it due to end? What was the budget? Just really quick wins that I think you see every single day.
yeah. Love that. Okay, no, great. I feel like that's also a good closing note of everybody listen to your project coordinators, update accordingly because it comes with all these amazing benefits. So there we go. Ending on a high there. Cool. No, Paige, thanks for that. I know we chatted through a lot, sort of the different project styles, the human elements of it, and how do you approach, clients who know what they want versus don't know what they want, building that trust in those early stages, as well as just kind of getting some examples of, hey, operationally, how does this all work, and what are the different roles involved. So yeah, interesting to run through all that. Um, Stepan and I, we usually close things off with a beer review. Obviously, it's a bit different here. You're on, and we didn't tell you about the beer review, so you don't have one. So instead, we'll just put you on the spot and say, hey, Paige, what is a beer that you would recommend? And first of all, are you even a beer drinker?
No. Is it
And
that
there you
obvious?
go.
Not a beer drinker. I'm definitely a white wine type of girl.
Okay, you have a favorite, you have a recommendation. You're from South Africa, so I know there's a lot of good ones there.
very good. I think I recently had a Turkish-delight rosé from Weltevreden. So I think that's this week's
Turkish
top.
delight.
Yeah,
There we go.
delicious.
Okay. Turkish delight, frosé. You said it was.
Yeah, yeah.
There we go.
that
Okay.
that's the one you open when the project closes in timeline.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
in timeline, yes, that's a win.
When
No,
everyone, yeah,
just
and
kidding.
when everyone fills their snippets and everyone does their job. Awesome. Okay,
Cool.
Paige, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, as always, anyone who's listening, send over more topics and things that you'd be interested in. We're trying to get more people also to join on the podcast, talk through different angles of not just RevOps, but anything that goes around RevOps projects, how you set them up. And so it's good this week to talk more about specifically the project management side of things, but plenty of other angles to touch on. Paige, Stjepan, any closing words?
No, I
No, I
think
don't
you
have
said
anything, but yeah, I think that's the pod. And subscribe. We are now on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple. So let us know what platform you prefer. And yeah, you can always DM us on LinkedIn if you have like a specific topic you want us to cover, or you have any like potholes that maybe we can help with. We just tackled the project management. I think that's one of the essential ones. So more to come. And yeah, that's it. Thanks everybody. See you next time.
Thank
bye.
you.